intake building where our big pumps are, and down the road there about a quarter of a mile. I don't know if you notice, there's a big kind of a square looking ugly concrete building, and that is where the Tualatin River, it has a little spur channel that comes to that concrete building, and there's some big pumps in there. We have 4 of them. We share that building with the Tualatin Valley Irrigation District, and they provide irrigation water for our farmers and stuff. And there's 2 big lines that come up here, and if coincidentally there's a blue dotted line down there on the pavement, our 42-inch line comes right up here, and it comes to this kind of structure here where all these valve wheels are. Comes right up underneath my feet. It kind of does a serpentine thing around here and is divided into 7 different set basins at this point. But right here is where we add chlorine to pre-chlorinate, and we add alum, aluminum sulfate, and this is where the beginning, our primary process starts right here, and this is the rapid mix. These pumps down here, you can see them, these blue things, they just kind of pull water out of this rapid mix and pump it back in at a high kind of velocity, and that helps mixing. But there's so much mixing in this thing now that it probably mixes itself pretty good, you know. But this is kind of a common style of rapid mix that you might see in other bigger plants. So I think that we'll walk out to the new set basin, which is where that windsock is. We go down these steps over here. Tualatin Valley Water District and Hillsborough Water. Yes. Winter and in the spring right now, there's plenty of natural flow down the Tualatin River, so we can take all the water that we want out of there. Unfortunately, we don't need a lot because people aren't using that much in the winter. They use a lot in summer, of course, when something occurs. That is that they restrict the flow down the Tualatin River, and all the users on the river have to call the irrigation district and ask for how much water they're going to need. So each day we try to forecast how many million gallons we're going to want to treat and provide the customers, all the partners. And they release that much at Hag Lake into the Tualatin River. And then we can take that much water out of the Tualatin River, but no more. And since we try to take every drop and not one drop too much. So we try not, if we ask for it, it's not good to let it go by, It's like not good conservation. So
does the irrigation district then take precedence over drinking water?
Everybody's kind of equal. Yeah. They do most of the math, but so Clean Water Services want some, and there's some in the river, put in the river for fish, and there's, all the users down the river. So these are the sedimentation basins, and the water came straight under our feet from the rapid mix over here to these sedimentation basins, and it travels this direction now through these 1 million gallons, another 1,000,000 gallons. Each one is 1,000,000 gallons.
How many of them?
7 total.
7 total.
4 of these newer ones and 3 old style. You can hear the flocculator motors traveling. They look like airplane propellers down in their big ones, and there are 3 flocculator chambers in these set basins. It's fast, medium, and slow. And then it just goes out into the sedimentation, kind of a slow detention process where the formed floc can settle out. And it'll make a sludge blanket on the bottom of these set basins. And since we can't let that build up, we have some drag chains, and we're lucky today we get to see those. It's pretty deep, you know, it's about 18 feet deep, so not all the time you can see clear to the bottom, but I think we can today. Periodically, those drag chains will pull the sludge back this direction, and a valve will take the sludge and pump it out to some drying beds out here. We can just kind of see the level of the water just barely over that gravel road there. See that orange float thing out there at that concrete structure? Okay, you can kind of head right down the middle.
No doubt.
Wow.
This thing can touch the bottom.
Those are those bars, those drag chains that go in a big loop, kind of like a conveyor.
Yeah.
And they drag the water, the sludge over here. And then there's another kind of a sideways small one that drags it over to a valve. And then the water level just allows that sludge to percolate out the top of that pipe and goes over to a pumping well where there's some sump pumps that pump it out to the drying beds.
Now these beds just periodically spit out? Like how does that work where the sludge gets pumped out to them?
Yeah. The drying beds?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. There's lots of ways to get rid of sludge. You can take it to a landfill, or you can land apply it, or you can put it in sanitary sewer if your local collection and treatment plant can handle it.
Let's see. Oh yeah.
Right now, for a long time, we had only these drying beds here, and we scooped them out periodically with tractors, and we just land applied it right over there. We do a little bit of that now. Mostly we haul it to a landfill.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So is there a reason that you can't use it for fertilization or any kind of
Well, can you see that there's not really a lot of good stuff growing in there? And I've tried to grow stuff in it, and you can, but it takes. That's always a good question. If you can find somebody that wants it, you can have all they want. But it's not the greatest stuff. And for a while, they thought it was a hazardous material. That it's not really. They thought that the alkalinity was too high, but it wasn't. They thought there was spent aluminum from the aluminum sulfate in there, but that's not too high either. And you can see a weed will grow in it. Only there was a market. What are these plants? From the river. What? Algae, dirt, goose poop,
alum?
alum.
wanted it to be. Right?
Well,
Kinda.
it's not very pretty, is it?
No, but at least it's all together in one spot.
This said basin over here, this is well, the only one where we have settling plates, and it probably makes the best water. Not a lot better, but you know, you got the money to spend on big fancy settling plates. What happens is the flock comes down the said basin and crashes into these things, and then it just starts to form and collect on those things, and it gets a clump of it, and it gets heavy and starts shifting down in big clumps, and you can kind of see it at the top. It's sort of clean, and towards the bottom it's heavier down at the bottom, and there's just a jillion of these things all at an angle like that. There's some sort of magic angle for the flow, and when it comes out of the top, it comes through the holes in these bars that you see and into the troughs that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And that's the last time you see the water in the primary process. It goes into the flume. It all collects together. All 7 sedimentation basins collect together. And in the flume, we add chlorine again to so there's been some chlorine demand in the primary process. What chlorine we put in is mostly used up, so we'll put a little bit more in here in the flume before it gets to the filters. The flume is just sort of a transition to get to the filter deck, which is over there, and we'll go over there here directly. All the way across all the ends of all the said basins and collects together and goes to a big, well, more flume that surrounds the filter. It supplies water to the filter. It's like a big manifold. Everybody made it, no broken ankles. Here we have a drying bed that doesn't have any sludge in it. It's kind of a sandy bottom, and there's a network of pipes buried out there, and the water can percolate down through that sandy stuff and be collected by those pipes. That's called the under drain. We can take that water that goes back down through there and just recycle it back to the rapid mix. Well, there's one over there. So we keep them in rotation, right? One of them's being used, one of them's drying, one's ready to go. Dry. can't really see it right now because we're not backwashing any filters or collecting any sludge or anything. But on this one that we're using right now, the water on the right would be kind of cloudy and milky looking, whereas the water on the left, down here by that orange float thing at the concrete structure here, it'd be nice and clear. Maybe you can sort of see that it's shallow over here. It looks deeper over here on the left. That's because of the settling that takes place on this side. And then when the water gets down that way, it has less solids in it, so less settling. Now as the water travels through here, we'll just recollect it there at that concrete structure and recycle it back into the gravity tank where we started. Okay? Well, I guess the first water job I had was back in the 70s. And we had a couple of ponds, and all the sludge and all the backwash waste went in there. And we would just, and this is on the North Umpqua River down in southern Oregon, and we would just throw a bucket out there and grab a sample with a bucket and dump it through a turbidimeter, and or test it with a Jackson candle turbidimeter. You guys ever hear of those? Okay. And if there was less turbidity in that sludgy water than there was in the river, we could just put it right back in the river. But you can't do that now. A Jackson candle is kind of a big long glass tube about this tall, sits on a little stand, and under the bottom is a candle, a special candle, and you light it, and you look down through this thing and pour water in there, and when the flame disappears, then you read how much water you put in there, and it'd be like a graduated cylinder. You know, it'll have a mark on the side and it'll tell you how many JTUs, not MTUs, about the same thing though, was in the water. And you would use that, you'd break those Jackson candles out when the river was so muddy that a turbidimeter couldn't handle it, or the plumbing would get plugged up from the mud and the sticks and everything. I think you've seen it drawing there. Three of them. I think we had about 7 of them out there. And here's the first one right here, and you can see those kind of mounds of dirt. That's where one of the contractors kind of got tired of hauling it off, I think, and so they just took it out of here and dumped it in this one for hauling off at a future date, I hope. We still do use those. Yeah. The water that goes into these drying beds is water from the bottom of the sed basins. The water that goes into the old drying beds is water from backwash, filter backwashing. There's a big chunk of 72-inch pipe that's a sort of a new big main transmission line that goes up the road here. Instead of going up to the reservoirs that Chris showed you pictures of that are up on the hill here, it just goes right down the street here and into town. That's how much we can make.
Oh, how much do you make average on a day, like right now?
Lately we've been making about 25.
Oh, okay.
I think the most we ever made was about 60. Well, these are the 2 original sed basins that were built with the plant in the 70s. The 3rd one is just over there, and it's just a carbon copy of these. And as you can see, they're a lot wider and shorter And instead of traveling full length, they collect water at these laundering troughs, and they go in. Then they travel into the flume, and the flume is just under our feet right here. So let's walk backwards against the water flow, right down that way.
You just have the chains to pull the water.
They have a different method. I think we can sort of. Yep, the others, 18 feet deep, but the floor is flat here, and there are some pipes that travel across the bottom and just are like a vacuum, and they pick the sludge up in this part of the set basin. We didn't used to have those. Those are retrofitted a few years ago, and it makes it nice because we have to clean these out sort of manually a couple times a year. And the sludge used to pile up to where you thought it was going to hit the bottom of these troughs. It was so deep. But it's mostly water, so when you drain it, a lot of it flows out, but there's a lot of fire hoses involved. And in this part of the set basin, it's even a little deeper. The floor of this is sort of cone-shaped. If you look down in the water, you can see the sweep arm moving over here. And it's just kind of a big scraper, like a helicopter kind of a thing, and it drags the sludge down to the middle over at the end of that catwalk where you hear that motor running. And then there's a valve down in the bottom. And every so often that valve opens up and it just flushes kind of like a big toilet. And all the sludgy water for a couple of minutes anyway goes to one of these sumps and is pumped out to the drying bed where we just were. So slow, fast, and medium, I guess.
It says light.
This is a filter. We have 14 of these, and this is the old style filter. The new style is quite a bit like this. Only difference is when we backwash an old one, we only do backwash one side at a time. So the floor, or the bottom that you see under the water there, that's anthracite. Kind of granular coal, high-grade coal. That's our primary filter media, and all of our filtering gets done in that deep layer of anthracite there. I think it's about 60, 70 inches deep. Normally this is full, right? This one is drained down. When it gets too dirty, when it's collected so much dirt that it won't make good water anymore, or we don't wait for it to make bad water. We stop it at a few different parameters. We could go the number of hours, or how plugged up it is. Maybe it doesn't even flow water through it anymore. We'll stop it at 8 feet of head loss. Or if it starts to break through and the turbidity starts to rise on the water that it's making, we'll stop it right then. On a good day, one of these filters will make 10 million gallons of water before we have to wash it. On a bad day, it could be 1 million. So that isn't so much a result of the filter, it's more a result of the bad water that we're getting and the process not being optimal. Normally the filters are full of that is the plume. And the plume goes all the way around all the filters and in between in a couple spots. And it supplies water to each filter. They always have water to them, available to them. And when we backwash it, it comes back up through there and it spills into these troughs and down into the middle. And it goes out to a couple of basins that we have out here where we recycle that water, the backwash wastewater, into some thickeners. We walked in between the thickeners. They were a round thing. We'll see them again. Where we do some more settling and the good supernature, the good water comes off the top and we recycle that backwash wastewater. So all the water gets recycled. All the dirty water gets reused. Didn't always used to be like that. Like I said, right back in the rivers. The plant was originally built with 4 filters only. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there's 14.
Wow.
So it just kept getting added on to. Can't really tell
Can't
much
tell.
difference, can you? They look the same, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they perform any better, or?
I like the old ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. They work well. You know, substantially better, measurably better. Every time, all year round. Yeah. We were backwashing a filter, we did your water, maybe filter the rigs. Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
Well, there's some pumps down there at the Well, we were just standing right up there. And right on the other side of the wall, those are filters that we were looking down into. So this is sort of basically the floor of what we've been looking down into in the set basins. So there at this peak. Down below us here now is another water tank. The clear well, the finished water, filtered water, is right below us here. And there's 2 million gallons total of filtered water that's down below us here. Each one of these filters has its own set of valves. And they're controllable up from in the control room in the building upstairs where we started out. And we'll walk through there so you can kind of see how we do it. But they're remote controlled, and if we want to backwash a filter, then let's stop the water going into the filter, and we'll stop the water going out of the filter after we drain the filter down. And then some air comes bubbling up through there, and it breaks all the filter media up. And then we stop the air. Then we'll push water up through there, and we'll wash it at the rate of, say, 9,000 gallons a minute for the new filters. And it falls into those laundry troughs, all this muddy, terrible looking water. And it goes out to those recycling basins that I talked about and gets recycled. All those valves, and there's a bunch of them. And they're all just a filter. It doesn't matter how big the water plant is where you go. They all have the same arrangement. Water has to come in, water has to go out. You have to be able to close those valves. You have to put water up through it, or air up through it. And so they all have common valves anywhere you go. They're just filters. So you turn them on, you turn them off. You isolate those valves, push water up through it. It's the same thing. Now here is a pilot filter. This is like a little tiny water plant here. Don't trip on this pipe right here, but you can walk around this side here. kind of look at what we have here. This is a test filter, and this is what we used, a pilot filter. This is what we used to do the study to re-rate our big filters so that we could make more water with them. And this just represents a filter. It is a filter. Water went in the top. Yeah, did you? Good. Then the water just trickles down through this anthracite. It's the same anthracite. We even took it out of one of these filters up above us here. And it goes out the bottom. And there's little samples off of it. And it goes to some turbidimeters. And we collected that data and monitored the head loss on it.
You sample each port to see how each part of the filter is working.
Well, you can do anything with these things. You can do a flow study. You could do a coagulant study. You could, they're just a tool to kind of see just what it is you can do with your water plant. It's just like a mini water plant, and you can get results real fast with it. And this is not the only one we have. We have one that we watch all day long that runs automatically over and over again, and we can see a profile of it on a computer screen, the trend line, and it tells us how well our process is doing. And we can see little deviations in this trend line, and it'll tell us whether we need, it will help us with our own intuition on whether we need more or less coagulant, or one or some parameter of our process needs an adjustment. But this is two filters, and they have the same valves as the big filters do. We backwashed them the same. We ran them the same. They made their own water, put it in this tank, and when it got full, it just spilled somewhere because it was clean. But when we had to backwash it, we used that water just like we do here at the water plant. We take water out of the clear well that we've made to backwash our filters with. Nice clean water. So it was kind of fun, you don't always do a pilot study, but when you do get to do one, they're very interesting. We did it for a period of months, and some people like it, some people don't. It gets a little bit mundane, but lots of adjustments and a little bit different plumbing, depending on what kind of a pilot study you want to do. I've seen a lot of these, but this one is manufactured, but you guys can tell that this is something that you can build, huh? It's just PVC plumbing and some tubing and some motors and some little pumps and a tank. And lots of people do build their own. When pilot filters first started getting popular, I think that the guys, all the operators at eWeb, built their own pilot filter. And they had sort of a little dog and pony show that they presented at the short schools. They'd say, here's what we did, we built this. And a slide show. Maybe we just had pictures on parchment. It was a long time ago.
The teacher does this at home.
Yeah. That's great.
Keep washing it.
Keep washing. Yeah. And everybody's a little bit different. The rate at which you wash has an effect on the anthracite. Of course, when you're backwashing it, it's sort of fluidized. It's tossed up into the water column. It scrubs against each other. They kind of bump into each other. And just the water flow across a little piece of anthracite tends to erode it a little bit. So these chunks are angular and sharp and kind of have facets on them. And they all kind of mesh together in a bed. But as they get older, they get rounded off. And there's space in between. So instead of meshing together nice and tight, there'll be air gaps in between. So you really have less anthracite. It might look the same, but it's because it's rounded, there'll be more space in between. And we'll do a study like that. We put them in sieves and measure the sizes that are left. We do that in our lab here. And some people will replace their anthracite completely. Some people will just add more. And most places just add more. If you replace all your anthracite, there's a big problem. So you're going to replace it with something bigger or smaller. And everybody loses a little bit of anthracite in a backwash. It winds up down in those backwash basins. Some places have rocks in the bottom, smaller rocks on top, some silica sand that's kind of pebbly, then some more silica sand that's finer, and then on the top of that will be some garnet, real fine garnet sand, and then capped off with a small layer of anthracite at the top. We have anthracite, deep layer, and silica kind of pebbles at the bottom. So dual media. Some people have multimedia. But all of those stay in nice distinct layers. When you backwash the water up through there, they all get mixed up, scrambled up, right? But when you slowly turn the backwash water off, because they all have a little bit different specific gravity, it flows right out in very distinct layers, just like a layer cake. These are all engineered things, you know. Right. So everybody loses a little bit of anthracite. So over time, even if your anthracite isn't worn out, you're going to have to replace some.
And how often do you guys tend to buy more and do that?
You know, we lose less anthracite than anybody I've ever seen. So I can't. These are all. So I think it's the same. But we could, you know, it comes in those big super sacks that are like big black tarp stuff that they have straps on the top. You lift them with a crane. It's roughly a ton of anthracite, depending on whether it's dry or wet. And I don't know, maybe we've got 4 or 5 tons out there that, in case we want to replace some if we don't need any right now. We do measure it every year. During the summer especially, we measure it at the end of a filter run, and then after a backwash, we measure it again in 4 different places on every filter. And we do that a few times. Yeah, from up there. Yeah, we got a surveyor's rod and drop it down until it touches the media and read it right from the floor level on the surveyor's rod. And then we just keep records of that filter and watch it from year to year to see how much we lose, if we lose any. So, if normal loss, I don't think one filter loses a 5-gallon bucket, really. Not very much here, but there are plants that lose a ton. You have to put a ton in every year.
Do you measure after every backwash?
No, just during the summer when the weather's nice and you don't have to stand in the rain up there for a couple of weeks. Yeah, each year.
4 filter runs per every 2 weeks?
I think so.
Okay.
Don't pin me down to exact numbers.
Okay.
A couple of weeks. At least 2, maybe 4.
That probably covers it. That probably will cover it.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially since when you start to build data from year to year to year to year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the air gap for?
That is when we filter the waste. At the end of the filter wash, we could make water with that clean filter, but it's too clean. The filter's not working quite up to par. So we will take water and circulate it through that filter until it's making acceptably clean water. And it comes out to the backwash basins.
Okay.
Has to be has to be an acceptable level before we put the filter online.
Okay.
And for us, that's 0.1